I refuse to allow somebody from the NHL to come over here and try to tell us in the NBA how we need to be doing what we do based off of what the NHL does. When your viewership it's not even close. It's not even remotely close.
Heard what Giannis says. He says, I think what we should do is, let's say, the world take on the American players in the NBA. Kind of somewhat sort of what are you doing in the NHL? What do you think?
Hockey's a different sport from the NBA. You can't compare the cultures because of the way the game is played. You can step on an NBA floor and go through the emotions. You can't do that in hockey. You can't. Like, the culture of our sport, you have to play it with passion. You have to be willing to fight. You have to be willing to leave it on the ice. That's what fans are investing in. So for us, when we charge $1,500 for a ticket to come to Foreign, fans know what they're getting. Cale Makar, the best defenseman in the world, wasn't in the lineup for this game. This was the most viewed game that we've had in years. And you see it, it's because it's not just based on the skill and talent. It's based on the pride, honor, playing for the guy next to you. I got a question for the NBA players. What the hell are you playing for? It's not about the money. You make all the money. What, you're injured? Well, there's a difference between being hurt and injured. There's a difference. In hockey, we play hurt. We play injured. That is the culture of the sport. It's always been that way. So you want to talk about the business, the CBA. Fans get all of that. But what do fans resonate with? They resonate with what's real. You got to fight sometimes for your country. You got to compete. You got to go out there and leave it on the ice because those people are paying the price of admission. So fans know whether our stars are on the ice or not, they're getting their money's worth. The NBA has that issue that they got to work on. You got to create a better culture for your players. It starts with the leaders. This issue, there was no issue when Jordan was around. There was no issue when Kobe was around. There's no issue when Sidney Crosby was around. There's no issue when Wayne Gretzky was around because those are true leaders. They lead by example. Sidney Crosby, Hockey Canada, those players, both Canada and U.S., it was the players that did that for the four nations. It's not the league. The league set it up, but the players went out there and decided and said, you know what, boys? We're all in. When is the NBA going to do that? Because, I haven't sat down and watched the NBA consistently since Kobe. I love basketball. Love the players. I think LeBron's great. I think KD's great. Steph Curry. Love watching them. But you got to be on the court. You got to be there. And when you're there, you got to go all in. The fans got to feel that they're getting their money's worth. And right now, there's a big difference between what the NHL's doing with those events and what the NBA's doing.
These are the NHL's Stanley Cup games, effectively what their version of the finals are. Since 2019, it was at 5.3 million. It dropped from 5.3 million to 2.1 to 2.4, went up to 4.6, went back down to 2.6, and at 4.2. It has not reached back up to 5 million since 2019. I want everybody to understand something very clearly. These are the Stanley Cup finals ratings. These are the viewerships for the biggest games of the year. These are numbers that the NBA pulls for regular season games. So, you telling me about what y'all do, how about you figure out a way for y'all to actually start catching up to the rest of American sports? Because y'all are at the bottom. College sports pulls more viewerships than y'all do. Let alone the professionals. All of this comes around this idea that LeBron didn't play in the All-Star game, so he's setting the precedent. You said it didn't happen with Kobe. Kobe also missed All-Star games. He sat out during All-Star games. It happened during his era as well. Carlos Boozer, Deron Williams. There's pictures of all of them sitting out during All-Star games. Shaq sat out during All-Star games. That happened. I don't know why y'all act as if like it didn't happen. I know why you act like it didn't happen, because you actually have never really been a fan. The problem that I have with ESPN is that because of the nonsensical arguments and bashing of the sport, they've now allowed anyone with an opinion to step on that platform and just air their grievances, regardless if there's some validity behind it or not. Us looking at an all-star game and making a determining factor of how this is impacting the viewership when the viewership has already been down is ridiculous. But history repeats itself. Hearing from NHL people talk about NBA viewership and comparing and contrasting what's going on over there to where we are now is what was literally happening 30 years ago. The irony of you sitting here saying this when 30 years ago we were having this exact same conversation. Why the NHL's hot and NBA's not? We're going in circles right now, chat. It's the same thing. Do you know how foolish it is to look back at this and say, back in my day, we didn't have this problem when quite literally 30 years ago, y'all were doing the same fucking thing, comparing the NBA to the NHL, despite the fact that the NHL even back then had a fucking fraction of the viewership. What happened during All-Star Weekend, the NHL would be so happy to have something like that. The level of viewership, they would be ecstatic because it would be an increase. The issue that the NBA is dealing right now where the viewership is dropping, it would quite literally be as if a Stanley Cup would be going on every single game for the NHL. That's how much of a difference we're talking about in viewership. But we've already been here before, where everybody just sits here and complains, and we get to the point where we're comparing quite literally the least viewed sport in America in contrast to one of the big three. This only happened because there was no longer a face of the NBA. Michael Jordan retired. Everyone lost their mind about, oh my God, I don't know what we're going to do with the viewership. And so they start making dumb shit like this. So when they're sitting there saying like, it's the leadership, back in my day, it didn't happen. So why did it happen with Shaq? Why was Shaq missing games? Why was Shaq not practicing? Why did Shaq decide to opt in to get surgery before the season began? Why is it that Scottie Pippen quit on his teammates and his team in the middle of a game? Why did he refuse to get surgery until the beginning of the season? Why was Allen Iverson not practicing and out partying all the time? Why is it that Charles Barkley literally gained weight before the season, but before he got drafted? Why was Charles Barkley spitting on people, kicking them, and throwing them through windows? Why is that? Why did Charles Barkley want to join Clyde Drexler and former super team? I thought it was competitive nature. Why is it that Adrian Dantley refused to play basketball? Why is it that literally half of the NBA was complaining about contracts in the beginning and mid-90s until they had to restructure everything? Why is it that the ratings were going down? Why is it that David Stern had to make a whole rule committee to fix the NBA in the late 90s? Why is it that Slam Dunk Contest was so dead that they literally canceled it in 1998? Why is that? Why is it that after Vince Carter revived it, it went right back to being dead, and then right after that, they had to make a tournament style and then have a spin of the wheel dunk? Why is it that they had to put in drug regulations? Why is that literally like a third of the league was on cocaine? Why is that? Why is it that one of the MVPs that people don't want to talk about back in the 90s was a pedophile? Why is it that y'all was so ignorant about HIV at that time that y'all literally forced Magic Johnson out of the NBA and had a pedophile on TV telling y'all what y'all should do with Magic Johnson, even though at that time he was talking to a teenager? Why is that? But that's what y'all wanted to, y'all wanted to do that? Y'all want to go to that time. Y'all want to go back to the early 2000s when there was referees gambling on games. That's what you want to go. Part of the problem with the NBA right now is how it's being covered. That's quite literally a massive part of the problem with the NBA. A massive part of the NBA is how it's just being covered. If somebody comes and tells you that, oh my goodness, you're not playing hard, and if you sit here and say you stopped watching basketball consistently since 2016, I'm here to tell you, brother, you've missed a lot of great basketball. No one would ever question if Giannis plays hard. No one would ever question that. No one would ever question who Curry is as a basketball player. No one would ever question who KD is as a basketball player. Go a little younger. The two Thompson twins who came in, both sides of the basketball don't shoot threes. They're here. Wemby is here. But instead of talking about these players, what they decide to do is focus on a negative aspect. And so now everyone believes what Jimmy Butler just did is a reflection of what's going on in the NBA, when it's not. Everyone believes what LeBron did when he didn't play into the All-Star game is a reflection of what's going on in the NBA. It's not. Everyone believes all these things that have occurred should be a reflection of what's going on in the NBA, and it's not. Negative things happen back in the day as well, and y'all just decided to not focus on those things. While Kobe was doing what he was doing, Shaq and them were dominating in the early 2000s, Spurs was going up as well. While all that was happening, referees were gambling, people were fighting, ran up in the stands, nigga brought a gun into the locker room, whole bunch of shenanigans was going on. But if you don't focus on those things, you can talk about the positives. In the 90s, you had a man protesting against the American flag, Magic with HIV, fights were constantly breaking out, ratings were fluctuating based on if Michael Jordan played or not, Scottie Pippen quitting on his teammates, Shaq deciding to not play games or deciding not to stay in shape, Shaq also going around being a movie star, Allen Iverson making rap albums, all that stuff was going on. But if you decide to focus on the positive, then that's how you can tell the story. Please don't get me started with all the shit that was going on in the 80s and 70s. this whole argument of back in my day, it was so great. What part of it was great? When you gave an MVP to a pedophile? That's when it was great. Dunk contest so bad, you cancel it. Somebody was doing a layup during a dunk contest. They were jumping over a chair in a dunk contest. I watched Stephen A. Smith complain about someone jump over a car and brag about back in the day in the 90s when it was so great when they were jumping over a chair.